What's up, guys? It's the Essential John L. Crossfire.
And I am Nova Lee.
And you guys are tuned into Caught
In Conversation.
Shaka-laka-laka. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 145 of Caught In Conversation. As always, I am your host, the Essential John L. Crossfire, and this is my first ever fully solo episode since October 2nd, 2022. Now, granted, 2023 only had 10 episodes all up because of health, but from episode 71 all the way to 144, we had co-hosts and interviews and everything in between. So that's, I guess it's, it's true what they say in terms of time flies when you're having fun, but man, that's so crazy. Well over 2 years since I've done a solo episode, so hopefully this is enjoyable. Hopefully this isn't just a total rant or a complete waste of an episode, but a bit of a special one this week. So this isn't, I just want to preface this by saying it's not predictions or by any stretch of the imagination. This is purely fantasy booking of just how I personally would book the entire 2025 John Cena retirement tour. But before I get into it, I do want to do a cheeky little plug myself and just say, hey, if you guys haven't subbed to the Patreon yet, which you should because we get early access for as little as $5, but from the $10 or $6, $10 Australian, $6 US, from the second tier and up, right now, if you subscribe, you get immediate access to my children's book. I have dropped it on Patreon first rather than distribute elsewhere. Once I've done all 3 books, as I've mentioned on previous episodes, this will be a little mini 3-book series, the Alphabet Smackdown series. Once I've done all 3, then I'll do digital through Amazon/physical. Physical is obviously the main goal. But each time a book releases, it will drop first on the Patreon page. And eventually, hopefully sooner than later, the audio versions will be coming, and I'm aiming to hopefully get that on like Audible and stuff like that. But again, first and foremost, we'll drop on the Patreon page. That'll be the $15 and up tier for Australian. It'll be obviously a bit cheaper US, but I think it's fair because $10 you already get the book, and obviously you get the book for $15 as well, but then you get the audio version with that. But yeah, I just want to give that a little cheap plug. It's a 30-plus page book. I've had quite a handful of reviews so far, both personally and publicly. I've got a couple of ones there publicly already, which really did appreciate. But before I get into it, the song of the week for this week will be Right Now by John Cena and The Trademark. Of course, Trademark is John Cena's cousin, and this is a very feelsy song, which feels appropriate given that, it's a retirement, themed episode. The match of the week is John Cena versus Kurt Angle from an episode of SmackDown, June 27th, 2002, which of course, John Cena's first ever match in that infamous open challenge by Kurt Angle, the Ruthless Aggression promo, which we have talked about the promo and that match at length on many episodes of this podcast with Nova Lee and, of course, other guests. And I will preface this just by saying that, John Cena's schedule has been announced as a full-time schedule in 2025. I don't know whether that includes house shows or whatnot. They haven't released the full details. All I know is that he's going to be on TV seemingly every week, starting with the Netflix episode on the 6th of January. And there may be a bit of contradiction as well with what I've done here, because I've specified, some opponents, and there's a few times where I've specified dates and stuff here and there as well as I could, but because they haven't released the full schedule yet for PLEs and stuff for WWE, it's still a little bit hit and miss. Like literally just yesterday as I record this, they just announced that for the first time in I think 3 or 4 years, there'll be a Raw in Madison Square Garden in March, a couple of weeks before WrestleMania. So obviously you'd figure that John Cena almost has to wrestle at that, and in a perfect world, I'd book him in the main event of that if it's his last ever Madison Square Garden Raw, but that's not in this episode, which I've written down previously. But yeah, I just tried my best to be realistic as I can within the current landscape of the company, while still prefacing that it is completely fantasy booking, not prediction or anything like that. But with that being said, I'm just going to jump straight into this and let's see if this sticks. So opponent number one will be Randy Orton. Now, and obviously Randy Orton and John Cena, their history is very, very, very well documented. They've actually had probably, like their whole story arc, spans about, 15-ish years. But they've probably had about 3, if not 4 separate feuds, within the time frame of that big stretch here and there at certain times or another. But the way I do this is very simple. Have these two guys eliminate each other in the Royal Rumble. John Cena has already said that he will be entering the Royal Rumble on this retirement tour, and he's aiming for championship number 17 and this, that, and the third, whatever. Have them eliminate each other at the Rumble. Say they make the final 4 for a bigger impact, and then whoever the last 2 is, obviously, they'll go on and do their thing. But I think have Cena go for the attitude adjustment to Orton over the top rope. It's a spot that we've seen him do many, many times. But Orton shifts the momentum, and then they both tumble out, similar to Cena and Batista in 2005, thus eliminating each other, thus eliminating themselves. And then I'd also have them both inside the Elimination Chamber, whether it's for the world title itself or just the number 1 contendership for the world title. Again, we don't know exactly just yet because we're still, we're barely just on the road to the Rumble now, which isn't until February 1st this year. But they're making Cena a big fixture of the Elimination Chamber advertisements in March in Canada. So I feel like he's going to have to be in one of the main chamber matches or one of the main matches. But the way I do it, both Orton and Cena in the chamber, and they both eliminate themselves. Somehow there's a double pin. The way I'd envision it was, the classic spot that's been done a couple of times now in Orton and Cena matches. But Cena goes for the attitude adjustment. Orton counters into the RKO. And I just think somehow they kind of land with, barely just one hand on top of each other, but the shoulders are down, so the referee has to count it. Therefore, they're both eliminated. And then that leads to them finally at WrestleMania having their first ever singles match at WrestleMania, which is still crazy that that's never happened with all the matches that these guys have had. Obviously they had the triple threat at WrestleMania 24 with Triple H, but the fact that these guys have never had a singles one-on-one match on the biggest stage of them all kind of still boggles my mind, to be honest. And I think if it's Cena's last WrestleMania, I think it's only fitting that this match finally gets ticked off on the grand stage here. And I'd have John Cena go over in this match, hence why I've kind of had Randy Orton semi be the instigator in the previous 2 things that I just mentioned, where it was him flipping the momentum on the AA to get the double elimination in the Rumble, him countering the AA into an RKO in the Elimination Chamber, etc., etc. But I feel like given the previous history between these two, mixed with current day obstacles of, hey, they've both gotten in each other's way of the championship twice in a row now to give them a reason for having that match without it just being a straight up nostalgia trip, that is how I would book that one. And I think it is worth noticing that, as I said before, I may contradict myself in terms of opponents and dates and whatnot, because I don't know the exact specifications of some of the PLEs in between, the big 4 and whatnot. But in a perfect world, I know that he's going to be full-time. But I just think I wouldn't have him wrestle more than once, possibly twice a month. Because in theory, even if it's twice a month, right, that's 24 matches, which is, that's double, if not triple more than he's done in the last, 5-6 years, kind of give or take. So I think that's a decent-ish number, but I just need to preface that again, because, I don't know about time frames, and I'm trying to keep it as realistic as I can without it still being, again, without predictions. It's fantasy booking, but yeah, I think in a perfect world, the way that I've done this as well is that I've kept in mind I wouldn't have him wrestle more than once or max twice a month. And again, I don't know if that means house shows or, here or there. But again, you can still, if it's just TV, you can easily have him on TV in promos and segments and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But opponent number 2, at this point, as I record this, Bron Breakker is the Intercontinental Champion. And for the sake of the argument, I'm going to say that he holds it all the way through past WrestleMania. And then on the Raw after WrestleMania. So we'll say that for the sake of the matter, Orton and Cena happens on night 2 of Mania, right? On the Sunday. So literally the next night, John Cena comes out to cut a promo. WrestleMania is going to be mid to late April, I think. I think it's mid-April. It's the latest it's been, I think, ever for WrestleMania. But at this point, you have John Cena come out. He's all banged up and he's all beaten up from the match with Randy Orton. He barely, scraped out the victory, et cetera, et cetera. And then Cena talks very openly and vulnerably about how we're only 4 months in and he's having doubts about how he's going to make the full year and, possibly some sort of sports or football reference about how this is just the first quarter. But the main point of the whole promo is that he's hurt and he's broken down and he may have bitten off more than he can chew. Perhaps his brain's even tricked him into realizing that there's more bark than bite, which, with all due respect to Randy Orton, who put up a hell of a fight, if he's struggling this bad after this one match with Randy Orton, how's he going to go against the younger opponents, et cetera, et cetera. Enter Bron Breakker, who comes out and initially starts to show a bit of respect for Cena, but as the promo goes on, gets a bit more disrespect, and he's saying that he's personally going to be the reason that John Cena will never be a Grand Slam champion, as he plans on breaking Gunther's 666-day reign, blah, blah, blah. The segment ends with Bron just destroying John Cena. He blindsides him by hits him with either the belt or the microphone, and then just goes ham, spears him for the barricade, and just mauls him with punches and yada, yada, yada. And you got to think that at this point, because Raw is going to be on Netflix, Cena could even get a bit of colour for a bit more dramatization? I don't know. For a bit more drama, anyway. My brain just fucking flipped as I was trying to say the word. But yeah, Cena could possibly get a bit of colour just to add a bit of dramatic effect, we'll say. And then like the next 2 weeks, you have John Cena segments are just like interviews with either Michael Cole or Byron Saxton or someone where it's like health updates and this and that, whatever. But then the end of the second interview on the second week, he challenges Bron to a match at, whatever the next upcoming PLE is, or perhaps Saturday night's main event, depending on dates, because they're going to only do 4 in 2025 and they're going to do them quarterly. So by that point, maybe they'll be due for another one, I don't know. But whatever the event is, they have their first match where, after a lot of aggression and a little bit of cheating, Bron Breakker actually retains the title against Cena. And the way I'd book it is he actually gives Cena an attitude adjustment of his own, just to add a little bit of cockiness in the aggressive, on top of the aggressiveness for Bron Breakker, pinning Cena with his own move, add salt in the wounds. And then they enter a rematch a couple of weeks later where it's on the main event of Raw. And John Cena actually finally becomes a Grand Slam champion, but he actually resorts to a roll-up. He has to use a roll-up to pin Bron Breakker to show what a threat Bron Breakker is to Cena, and show that maybe Cena is possibly breaking down. And it's also a great callback to the initial version of Cena, because obviously when he first debuted, he was basically the wacky roll-up guy, which with every match that he won with a different variation of some sort of roll-up or pinning combination that kind of came out of nowhere. And you'd say that, given that it was almost a fluke with the roll-up to pin Bron, that gives Bron a reason to get a rematch, because I know that automatic rematch clauses aren't necessarily a thing in pro wrestling anymore, especially WWE. 9 out of 10 times the champion does get a rematch anyway, but it's not written in stone anymore. So I think having Cena use a roll-up to pin Bron gives Bron a reason to be like, well, hey, you stole that title, it was a fluke, this, that, whatever, right? And then they have a third match And it'll be, again, whether it's PLE or Saturday night's main event, depending on the time, and probably some sort of PLE. But Cena actually pins Braun, this time decisively with a top rope attitude adjustment. Opponent number 3. This would just be a little mini feud, but I'd have Dominic Mysterio, because it'd be full circle, as John Cena was one of the main ones that had a big hand in helping Dominic very early in Dominic's career, and perhaps, has Cena defending the Intercontinental Championship against Dom, again, either on Raw or Saturday night's main event. The mini feud culminates on PLA in a tag team match, where it's John Cena and Rey Mysterio versus Dominic Mysterio and a now heel CM Punk. It kind of saves wasting a Cena Punk one-on-one singles match at this point as well. Opponent or opponents number 4. Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. Similar to how John Cena did the United States Championship Open Challenge, he decides to bring back the John Cena Open Challenge, this time for the Intercontinental Championship. And on an episode of Raw, the challenge is thrown out. It is answered by Trick Williams, who by this point will have been on the roster for a few months. John Cena even singing along with the whoop that Trick chants during the entrance as a major sign of respect. Trick will show, visible, admiration and respect, and visibly humbled by the reaction that he's getting from one of his idols, or in John Cena. You can have a small back and forth, get a solid 8 to 10 minutes, especially for a TV matchup. Trick gets an opening where Cena is seemingly on the ropes, but right before he can capitalize with that trick knee, insert Carmelo Hayes, rebirthing the feud between Melo and Trick from mid-2024 in NXT. Now on the main roster here in mid-2025, Carmelo beats Trick down, causing Trick to technically win, but it's by disqualification, so John Cena retains by default due to champion's advantage. The following week, instead of doing an open challenge, John Cena comes out and straight up calls out Trick Williams because they have unfinished business, seemingly ignoring the actual Carmelo attack being the reason for the unfinished business. Trick makes his way out with fire in his eyes that definitely wasn't there in his entrance last week, but is still then jumped from behind by Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo taunts Cena. Cena gets a little bit pissed off himself now, and now he does acknowledge me. Cena does now acknowledge Carmelo and says, "Screw it, you're out here, the referee's out here. Ring the bell." You come back from commercial break, the match is already underway. There's only a minute or so into the match so far. They're still feeling each other out. But after only a few minutes, Trick Williams rushes the ring, assaults Carmelo. Cena tries to pull Trick off Carmelo, tries to calm him down, but in a blind rage, Trick actually shoves Cena down. Then he snaps back to reality, realizing what he's done. Later in the show, you see John Cena talking to Adam Pearce. He convinces Pearce to make a match between Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams the following week, saying where the winner for that will get an Intercontinental Championship match against John Cena by this point at SummerSlam. Carmelo Hayes, he uses the tights or the ropes for leverage, or maybe both because heel life, And then at SummerSlam, there's a backstage scuffle before Trick and Hayes is on his way to the ring. Trick's mad, that Pearce has let the decision stand with the blatant cheating. Hayes can't help himself. He has to interject and come over to gloat and say, well, hey, the referee can only call what they see. Sucker punches Trick before scurrying away to make his entrance. And then for the actual match, after a relatively even matchup, mostly clean, even from Carmelo, except for a couple of little subtle heel things here and there, eventually he decides it's time to heel it up. Carmelo removes a turnbuckle pad, and while the referee is trying to fix it, hits a low blow on Cena, but as he climbs to the top rope for his nothing but net leg drop, because the referee is distracted, Trick Williams pops out of nowhere, snatches Carmelo's legs from under him. Carmelo takes a tumble, hits the ground. Trick disappears into the crowd. And of course, the referee turns around just in time to see John Cena yanking Carmelo Hayes up in the air for a very emphatic attitude adjustment dead center of the ring to retain. And then at either the following pay-per-view or PLE I should say, or again, Saturday night's main event, depending on dates, you have a triple threat. Cena, Carmelo, and Trick Williams. The ending comes when Carmelo takes out Trick with either an object or a finisher or something, because it's a triple threat, anything can happen. But Carmelo does something to take out Trick. Cena hits an AA on Carmelo, who, kind of bounces and rolls out of the ring from momentum. And Cena exhaustedly, almost accidentally possibly, as a callback to the Fatal 4-Way where Cena falls on top of Edge from the super kick from Shawn Michaels. But Cena basically falls on top of Trick indirectly for a cover 1, 2, 3 because Trick is down from whatever Carmelo has done to him. And then number 5, there's actually a handful. I'm saying, as I said before, he'd bring back the Open Challenge. So there's just a few people that I'd like to see. Javon Evans from NXT, whether it's a call-up or whether it's just a one-night only thing. Have another one-on-one match of Dominic Mysterio, this time as part of the Open Challenge. Grayson Waller, obviously, is a big one. He had that segment with Cena. Grayson Waller is obviously an obvious one. Obviously obvious. That's say that sometimes fast. But after the segment that he had with Cena at Money in the Bank in, I can't even remember if it was 2024 or if it was 2023. I think it was last year in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. But there's obviously some sort of match needs to happen between those two. Jacob Fatu answering the Open Challenge would be a big one. And of course, the main one for me, and again, this is where it comes into, this is fantasy booking, it's not a prediction, but you have Raw in the UK, or perhaps even Clash at the Castle, or whatever. John Cena's in the ring, he's doing the Open Challenge, and all of a sudden, say his name, and he appears. Joe Hendry versus John Cena on Monday Night Raw. And again, could be Clash at the Castle, but it's a complete one-off for Joe Hendry on the main roster. But that's fine. Joe Hendry's been saying for ages that he wants a John Cena match. John Cena has actually acknowledged Joe Hendry on social media, so I just think that's how I'd do it. But number 6, we have Logan Paul, and this one is quite simple. You go into Survivor Series now. And leading up to Survivor Series, it's one of the big 4 pay-per-views, or PLEs. I still think that WWE should have PLEs and then Rumble, Mania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series are still pay-per-views on top of it. But that's neither here nor there. But Survivor Series, you need a big money match. So you insert 2 of the biggest stars in the whole world. Obviously, Logan, the cocky little prick throughout the whole thing. Cena, very much the babyface, which shocks even him at how strong the favoritism is with how, controversial he's been over the years. But everyone unites with Cena against Logan Paul. Really just getting over how controversial Logan Paul is. And the match is very straightforward. Logan tries to cheat over and over, even intentionally distracting the referee with his brass knuckles just as a ploy so that he can hit Cena with a chain and lock as a throwback to John Cena's Dr. Thugonomics days. And you could even have a rap battle between the two leading up to the match for even more of a callback. And obviously in this matchup, you'd have Logan doing a bunch of athletic shit. But ultimately, Logan Paul suffers his first ever submission loss in the WWE, where John Cena makes him tap out to the STF, which hopefully for Cena, he'd actually make the hold believable. Because as much as I love Cena, that's one of the very few issues that I've ever had with him, is that it doesn't quite crank that hold and make it believable, possibly as he should. At number 7, this is actually the last opponent that I've had for John Cena. I've powered through this a lot quicker than I thought I would, and I'm being transparent here. This has taken about 3 attempts to record all the way through because my technology keeps crashing. Hopefully when I edit this, it won't seem noticeable until I'm then pointing it out to you guys, which the irony is, as I was saying that last sentence, it crashed yet again, and I had to start recording again mid-sentence from what I was saying. But anyway, lucky number 7, the last opponent on this list is Gunther. At this point, John Cena has been Intercontinental Champion for just over 6 months. I believe it'd be about 7 months if WrestleMania is in April, and you go into the end of November, start of December, and you have Cena cut a promo about how he still, wants to be a 17-time world champion, this, that, and the third, whatever. And you announce that on the last Saturday of December, which in 2025 is the 27th, WWE holds a PLE, and let's just say for the sake of the argument here, they bring back the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view. And I know it's traditionally been held in January in its previous installments, what are words, buy the shirt, but it still does fit into the appropriate time frame, I feel, to get away with it. But anyway, you have John Cena come out on an episode of Raw, and he almost does like an option C type thing, like what TNA does with the X Division Championship, where he, basically says that he's going to cash this in, he's going to hand this in, he's going to relinquish this, which, one, makes a way for a tournament to crown a brand new Intercontinental Champion going into 2026 and Rumble season there. But he relinquishes the Intercontinental Championship for a shot at the World Heavyweight Championship at Gunther, who at this point is more of a babyface, definitely still a tweener, but he's actually in this fantasy booking, he's actually in his second reign as World Heavyweight Champion after losing it briefly for about 3 to 4 months to Drew McIntyre. Gunther does start to get a bit more heelish again, though, during the lead-up to John Cena / the actual match itself. And I'd have this be the longest matchup of this entire John Cena retirement tour, especially being the last one, being his last match. I'd have it go, 40 minutes would be maybe too much, but I'd say definitely over 30 minutes, and I'm talking after the bell rings. Like with entrances, probably a good 45-minute segment, because why not? He's John Cena and he fucking deserves it. But anyway, you have these guys go just over 30 minutes with many callbacks to John's career and opponents. Both Gunther and John Cena maybe hitting moves here and there from John Cena's past opponents. For example, you could have Gunther hitting a pedigree or an angle slam, etc. John could hit a spear a la Edge / Roman Reigns or a Randy Orton DDT. Even at unthinkable, like John Cena hits a diving HBK-like elbow off the top rope or something like that. But ultimately, the unthinkable happens. Gunther locks in his chokehold for the third or fourth time in the matchup, and John Cena at this point, with tears in his eyes, in his last ever professional wrestling match, taps out for the first time in over 20 years in his last ever professional wrestling match. Gunther retains. John goes out on his back. Gunther gets a huge moment that now nobody else will get in the history books. A couple days later on Raw, John Cena and Gunther shake hands. Cena puts over Gunther on the mic, gives him props as well as everyone else that he's crossed paths with during the space of this, 2025 year. Whether he likes them as people or not, they've all earned his respect, yada, yada, yada. John Cena does the traditional humble babyface thing that he does. John Cena announces that much to his chagrin, against his humble rejection, the next week on Raw, the first of the year for 2026, it'll be January 5th, by the way, will be John Cena Appreciation Night, which they do a very similar setup to when Ric Flair retired in 2008. John Cena has the last laugh by he himself dubbing it the Cena-nuff episode of Raw as a true John Cena tongue-in-cheek callback to the polarizing reactions that he has received over the years. Insert January 5th, 2026. I, as a 31-year-old man by that point, would be crying like a little bitch for the whole 2 to 3 hours of this episode while they were showing clips in between the other matches and segments on the show. And then the actual, celebration in the main event slot where they're, hey Alexa, play Leave the Memories Alone by Fuel. I make that joke all the time, but I know they did that for Flair, but hey, bring that same song back. Or maybe even the song of the week that I mentioned at the start of the episode, Right Now, by John Cena himself and Trademark. But I think that would 100% when it all said and done, they've almost got to do a John Cena special edition of Raw. But just to recap these opponents, like as I said, I powered through those way quicker than I did. I'm hoping I'm not talking too fast. I know I always do talk fast, especially when I'm by myself. And I have been flustered by many, many technical issues. One of the most recent times where it stopped recording, I actually got a pop-up saying that it was detecting something that shouldn't have been detecting, so I turned that off. So hopefully whatever that interference was stops it from dropping out. But to recap the actual opponents to John Cena, and again, I'd only have him wrestle once or twice a month, so that's 12 to 24 matches for the entire 2025. But I would have Randy Orton, Braun Breaker, Dominic Mysterio, as I said, possibly CM Punk in a tag match with Ray and Dominic Mysterio, Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams, Javon Evans, Grayson Waller, Jacob Fatu, and I Believe in Joe Hendry, Logan Paul, and his last ever opponent, I would have Gunther. And obviously, there's people like Cody Rhodes and LA Knight, which are probably most likely to happen in real life, probably as some sort of tags or multi-mans, or whether they're his opponents in those matches or partners remains to be seen, but I could see that happening. Honestly, I'd love to see one last John Cena versus Miz match as well. Maybe one of the open challenge matches that I've fantasy booked here, you could throw Miz in there. But again, this is all 100% fantasy booking while doing my best to draw from the actual reality, but not predictions in the slightest. But before I give my final thoughts on John Cena, I'll quickly recap the song and match of the week and throw out the plugs. And as I was doing this, it crashed again, even though I turned whatever that setting was off. So I jinxed it because it happened like straight after I said it. Oh my God. The song and match of the week for this episode, right now, by John Cena and the trademark, and the match of the week, John Cena versus Kurt Angle, SmackDown, June 27th, 2022. June 27th, 2002. I will always remember. Now, with that being said, this episode is dropping just a few days before New Year's. So I am retiring a chunk of designs off my Pro Wrestling Tees store. So to plug everything, obviously I'm going to put Nova's Linktree in there as well with all of her socials and stuff. But if our socials contain all of the podcast our Linktrees contain all of the podcast socials, the Patreon, which I'll plug properly in a minute. But mine has the Pro Wrestling Tees, the Amazon wishlist, the GoFundMe if you're feeling froggy. But the Pro Wrestling Tees, I will be retiring. I think there was 7 or 8 designs. I did post them on social media, but on New Year's Eve, I will be retiring a nice little chunk of my designs off my Pro Wrestling Tees store. So yeah, go do that, because you'll still have, if you're listening to this obviously on the Sunday when it drops on the 29th, you'll have 2 days before I do that. But yeah, I'm just trying to tidy up, / I'm also trying to get the podcast merch on its own separate store as well, just to tidy it up a bit more. Again, what are words? Buy that t-shirt. But I'm just trying to tidy it up because I do have some ideas for some newer merch, some fresher merch, some much cleaner looking merch. Because again, a lot of the stuff that's on my store, majority of it I have myself have designed, and a lot of it's trial and error. And as I go and as I continue to grow Crossfire_graphics, that's another thing you should follow, One-Eyed Graphic Designer. But as I continue to grow, obviously my designs are going to get better, and I want I should feel, I'm always terrible with putting a lot more pride and effort into stuff I do for other people as opposed to myself. So I'm trying to get out of the habit of that, and I'm trying to make myself look as good as I can as well. But yeah, they've got a couple of merch designs that I'd like to throw out, so I'm trying to tidy it up. But then there's also the book, which I'm about to go into the plugs for the Patreon and all that, but with some of the logos and stuff, like the fake wrestling company that I've put in book 1, and then subsequently, book 2 and 3 will have separate ones as well. I'm toying with the idea of putting the logos, air quotes on an audio podcast, but the logos for those company I'm thinking about putting on either my Pro Wrestling Tees store, or if I do get a separate CIC pod store, chucking them on there as well. But yeah, I'm just trying to have a little clean and make it look refreshed and make it look better and just more professional, basically, at the end of the day. But with that being said, check out the Patreon page. You can get early access for as low as $5 dues, as Nova Lee would like to say. We've got a $5 tier, $10 tier, $15 tier, $20 tier. Of course, the $20 tier is called the Supernova tier. Supernova, baby. Feels so weird trying to do all of Nova's bits while I'm at it. But yeah, for as little as $5 a month, you get early access, 2-day early access to these episodes. This episode's actually dropping a day late on the platforms. Actually, I should say this is dropping on Monday the 30th. So you'll have 1 day for the Pro Wrestling Tees. So just, again, what are words? This is professional. I said I was trying to be more professional, and then I just realized I completely botched what I was doing. But these technical issues that I'm having as I'm recording this episode for the last, I'm about 35 minutes into this episode, I think, give or take. And for about 45 minutes, I've been having tech issues. But yeah, so just do all that. But check out the Patreon page. $5 gets you early access, 2-day early access. Usually, with the interviews and stuff we've had lately, we've had 3 or 4 days early for the early access. But yeah, from $10 Australian, $6 US, the second tier and up, you get immediate access to Alphabet Smackdown, Call of the Wild. And as I said in one of the social media videos, I am self-aware enough to say that given that it's my first book and I'm writing and as a legally blind person trying to illustrate it myself, it is a little bit rough around the edges, but I am very, very proud of how it's turned out. And I've received some great feedback from some family and friends in my DMs. I've had a couple of reviews now publicly on the page, which I greatly, greatly appreciate. But yeah, just check it out, support it, and just give me your feedback, basically. It is $10. Come on, guys. You can afford $10. But yeah, go check out all of those links. But I'm going to move on now to the actual plugs and try and power through this because I don't want this to drag on because it's just me. And I don't want to keep getting flustered from these constant technical issues that I've been having while trying to record this podcast. Maybe Audacity and the world of podcasts has seen enough of the Caught in Conversation podcast. I don't know. Technology just is not my friend. That's another merch design that may come if I get a separate store for the pod merch. Gives me a chance to expand my horizons there. But yeah, anyway, for the actual plugs and upcoming events, MXW WrestleFest on February 28th, March 1st, 2025, so Friday and Saturday. It's a doubleheader. It's a super show in Geelong. Links will be in the description below. They have former WWE superstar Brian Kendrick on this show. I'm sure that'll be a massive show. I'm sure the guys and girls on the MXW roster will learn a hell of a lot from working with Brian Kendrick. Also on March 1st, Extreme Capital Wrestling and the ACT have announced they've announced the new date. I'm going to leave that in one take. This is a professional production. ECW Hard Day's Fight, new date, March 1st also, but in the ACT. Tickets will be on sale in the new year, so keep an eye out on the ECW socials for all of that stuff. And then March 8th, ICW Australia, also in the ACT. Well, technically ECW actually is in New South Wales because they're back at the Queanbeyan Tigers Club now. Again, this is a professional podcast. Over in the ACT on March 8th, ICW Insane Asylum 24. Links for that will be below because tickets just went on sale this week as I record this episode. I'm getting flustered. I am so sorry, guys. I need Nova here to calm me down, but these technical issues are really something. I honestly, while I was writing my notes for this John Cena episode, when I was doing the Gunther bit about the tear in his eye and whatever, I made myself tear up while writing that. I thought it was brilliant, and I don't think it actually landed as well as I thought it would because I'm trying to just power through and get this out. But anyway, fast forwarding all the way from March to November. On Saturday, November 1st, 2025, as of this recording, I believe there's 59 or 58 tickets remaining, so we've already sold about 20, 30 tickets, and then obviously the corporate seating that'll be up on the stage as well. ICW Central West presents the third Emma Butler Memorial Show, with the 2 shows in 2022 and then now the most recent one that just happened last month as we record this, or actually a month and a bit ago, was the end of October in 2024. Those 2 shows combined raised a little over $4,000 for the Emma Butler Tongue Cancer Charity and has saved lives. And obviously I've been very candid about, my dad died from the same cancer, so it obviously means a lot to me. So buy your tickets. I've still got a bunch of Radiation Kick shirts actually here at the compound as well, if you wanted to hit me up and raise some money yourself for that, plus get some swag, and I guess whatever's left over I'll just drag to the Emma Butler show again. I was hoping to get more fresh ideas made up, but obviously if I've still got shirts there, I'm gonna have to get rid of those first. But yeah, let's raise some money for Emma for a good cause. But now let's try not to get too sentimental or emotional. But I know for a fact, obviously, he's never going to hear this episode. But on a personal note, I do just want to say thank you to John Cena and everything that he has done, both inside and outside the ring. But just for the business in general, he's just truly one of a kind individual. And from myself, from all the way from being a 10-year-old kid to when I first saw him to now being a 30-year-old man, John Cena has inspired me in so many, many, many ways, and quite often over the years has had a very big hand in being a part of distracting me from the realities of, the sometimes very shitty realities of real life, whether that be in his matches or his movies. And obviously he's not retiring from movies, but WWE was at the core of, or at the cusp of why I found who he was, and then why I've now followed him to his movies and everything else. And even his album, I still have his album. Like, I got his CD when I was 14 years old, which was 2.5 years after it was released. And for those 2.5 years, I begged my family to get me that CD. And finally, in 2008, on my 14th birthday, we finally found somewhere that was able to order it in to where I was living in Goulburn at the time. But the advice that John Cena has given in so many interviews and podcasts and things like that are just always worth the listen. And I know that, as I said, he'll still be in the movies, and obviously even after 2025, he will still appear in WWE from time to time. And obviously we're waiting on that inevitable Hall of Fame induction as well. But this, John Cena talks about how the machine will keep moving without him and this and that. And while that is accurate, I feel that it is still going to leave a very, very noticeable hole for quite some time, regardless of how, humble Cena is himself about, talking about how the wheels will keep turning and whatnot. But it is definitely going to leave a big hole in the business. I'm just repeating myself here. And again, I'm legit trying not to get emotional, because this genuinely, writing this list out actually made myself depressed. And I know that's first world problems and everything else. It's just professional wrestling, but it is what it is. I'm just trying to be transparent here. From the ages of about 11 to 13, I legitimately had a John Cena shirt for every day of the week, and they were all from the Chinese bootleg markets. I had 2 or 3 pairs of jean shorts to go with them, and as I mentioned, I had the album for my 14th birthday, but I still have that CD actually in a box. I know exactly where it is, and it's still pretty much in mint condition, which is crazy considering the amount of use that I did actually get out of it, the amount of listening that I actually did give to it. But from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say one last time, thank you, John Cena, for everything that you've done and everything you'll continue to do in the business, behind the scenes and beyond. And I definitely will be doing a top 10 matches of John Cena episode when he does officially hang up the jorts. And I'm sure that's probably going to make me emotional all over again. But again, I'll just quickly recap the song and match of the week amongst all that ranting. Right Now by John Cena himself, featuring his cousin, The Trademark. John Cena versus Kurt Angle. John Cena's SmackDown debut, June 27th, 2002. And of course, all the plugs and everything there, especially the Patreon. Please check out please check out my kids' book. I'm very, very proud of it, which is something that doesn't happen to myself very often. And as I said, this is the first solo episode fully since 2nd of October 2022. And unfortunately, just my luck, this is the most amount of technical issues I've had in 145 episodes, but it is what it is. But yeah, just thank you, John Cena. I am the Essential John L. Crossfire. You were just caught in conversation. Titty sprinkles, shaka laka laka. You can't see me. The last time is now.